All right. Hi, this is Dr. Gilbert, and I am joined today by Rachel Matthews and Greg. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you.
Welcome, Rachel.
Hello.
Greg happens to be my brother, and he's our awesome web guy. And so, anyway, I've invited him to our first Nutrition 101. And so we have, so I wanted to talk about why to decide. Hold your books up, everybody. We are going to be talking through Michael Pollan's food rules. And Rachel and I have been talking now for a good, at least a year, like, okay, we need to do a nutrition class. And you know, I went through a couple of renditions, you know, just like our Tiny Habits thing where, you know, you're designing something, it's not working, you're going back to the drawing board. Anyway, so I tried a couple of Vimeo sessions and edited by my brother. And for whatever reason, I don't know, I don't have whatever it takes to have all that pizzazz right in front of the camera all by myself. But you know what? An audience is a little bit different. And so I thought, hey, why not combine our live with, you know, some great nutrition information. Now, let me just say, this is not medical advice, right? I have to say that. I think this does not constitute medical advice, right? You have to go to your doctor for that. But we can talk about food in general, right? And Rachel, can you give us a little background on Michael Pollan's book, Food Rules?
Yeah, so I think we chose this book, and we're going to be talking about this book because it's, first of all, it's simple, it's easy, it's small. If you could see this, where am I? It's, it's not much bigger than my hand, right? So there's such deep, profound wisdom and knowledge in this book. And I think each page, each day, that every time we go through this, we will have a jumping off point to start a conversation. We would love for you guys to join us live whenever possible so we can see your comments, so we can interact with you. We want to hear your questions also. So if you send your questions ahead of time, send them to the office via email. Maybe we have a chance to talk about that specific question. This book is going to go through the really basic, simple nutrition. Like I said, it's like food rules. We're not talking about deep nutrition science. We're not talking about, like Dr. Gilbert said, we're not going through the deep medical reasons why you should be eating certain things. That's for your doctors to decide with you, right? We're talking about the basics of nutrition and how to pull apart all the myths, pull out the truths, and find an easier stepping point for us to kind of approach food. So that's why this book.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right, Greg. You picked up the book.
I did.
And read the first couple pages. What did you think? Tell us about,
Well, I like the fact that the chapters are short, at least the first one anyway.
Right.
It's short and to the point. This is something that you kind of know intuitively, but I like this idea of eat food and, eat real food, I think is the big thing. I so often, just chatting with other people, that I'm the spectacle of health by any means, but, you talk about what you eat with other people and things you've heard and whatnot. And of course, seems to be the rule of thumb is shop the outside aisles, right? Where all the fresh food, produce, meat, poultry, dairy, all that stuff is, and stay away from the interior.
Right.
And you at least have a better advantage because that is where the produce is. That's where the real food is. And as I've told many people, the closer you get to the dirt it came from, the better it is. So that's y'all, you and Kenny garden, and I don't know, Rochelle, if you garden as well, but the idea that you can walk out to your garden and pull a pepper or pull a carrot out of the ground or a strawberry off the strawberry bush is huge. But that's kind of just that rule of thumb. So it's a great opening thing is to stick with the real stuff. So
eat food. right? That's number one. Eat food. Okay.
And I would put that little carrot and just put real, right? Eat real food. So.
Yeah, that's right. And so that, right, exactly. And that begs the question, what is food, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because our food in the United States, or really over the world, but well, I mean, we're talking about the United States, but it has been made this huge transformation over the last 150 years, really.
Right.
And actually, that's kind of been really interesting because someone just turned me on to Food, the Making of America, or it's on the History Channel. Anyway, the history behind how our food has changed over the years and why, what the economic forces, or lots of different forces in history that has changed our food, the way we grow it, the production of it, what we eat. It is fascinating. It's really fascinating. You know, 150 years ago, there really wasn't the question, what should we eat? Right?
Well, there was a scarcity problem. So you ate what was available.
Right.
I mean, we have a luxury that is unfounded, unprecedented, truly, in America, that we just haven't seen, and throughout the world. I mean, we definitely have impacted the world throughout the ages, and especially with food. There's been studies where that we've Americanized different countries and stuff. 1 second. Sorry, we're doing some pre-production while I'm here in the studio. So I go on air, not I, but our talent goes on air in about half an hour. So we're just doing a little pre-production. But there's been studies where you see that people, where Americanism, or the American way of life, has infiltrated.
That Western diet.
Exactly, and it comes down to the Western diet, or the standard American diet. I love how it happens to be SAD, right? SAD. And to see a otherwise healthy culture become very unhealthy in a very short time, within a generation, because of the impact of these processed foods, the highly processed concoctions designed by, and I want to put in parentheses, food scientists. Basically, they make it palatable enough to get through your body, and your body doesn't just shut down immediately. One of the things that we're learning more and more is how all these chemicals are really creating a disease culture. These chemicals that we're eating, and it is scary. So again, not medical advice. It's just you start paying attention to the articles that are out there and what we're learning, and it is quite eye-opening.
Right. You know, what I learned about, you know, some of the beginnings of our processed food is that it started out of the necessity is the mother of invention, right? So, you know, in the late 1800s, there was the urbanization of America because of the Industrial Revolution, and people were moving from their farms where they grew their own food into the cities where they were not able to grow their own food. And so, and this was before refrigeration and those kinds of advances. And so food would often spoil, and, you know, particularly meat. And so one of the first guys on the scene was Heinz. And he made, you know, he was tinkering with just the right tomato paste and how to make that to cover the spoiling meat, to cover the taste of the spoiling meat. Isn't it amazing?
It is.
But it was one guy tinkering. And now we have huge plants. And as Greg, you referred to your point, these food engineers or these food scientists, I mean, and they're in, you know, they're in these laboratories and mixing, you know, and concocting and testing foods, the different ultra processed foods with just the right amount of sugar, just the right amount of salt, just the right amount of fat, and, you know, not natural fats, to your point, Greg, but chemistry fat, chemistry salt, chemistry sugar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and then they're testing it on people and watching their brains light up, you know, under like a PET scan or something like that. So they can figure just the right concoction, as Michael Pollan points out, for us to make it highly overly palatable. You know, so where Heinz was just trying to cover up spoiled meat, now we're to the point, you know, to make it hyper palatable or overstimulating our brain so that we want more and more and more of
Sure.
it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's addictive. Like so many things, it's addictive, and
Can be.
it feeds into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So Rachel, why do you think processed foods are so difficult to avoid?
Well, certainly everything you mentioned, the SOS, as I like to call it, the salt, oil, sugar, the perfect combination to make it no longer recognizable to nature, how it first came out of the ground, how you said, Greg, or from the earth in some way. So our palates are tricked. We no longer have an understanding of the taste of real food and how simple but also very beautiful the flavors are, because we're tricked into searching for that high explosive flavor. Once you've come off of some highly processed foods for a while, you start to recognize the nuance of seasonings, of fruit, and how sweet they really are. And then you can also start to pick out the flavor of chemicals in your foods. You start to be able to taste the manufactured part of it when you start to get down to it.
Right.
I think the other thing that's really what I see in my coaching with clients and patients is that, you know, this first chapter, it says, I mean, literally chapter 1, eat food, right? But it's like you had mentioned, Greg, it's easy to say real food as natural as possible, but even that tends to get people snafu'd, because they understand a piece of meat is real food. They understand that a broccoli is real food, and that, you know, rice is real food. But then they're kind of like, but is rice real food? Was it processed, right? A potato came straight from the ground, but mashed potatoes and now potato chips, right? We keep getting further and further away from how it would naturally. And then you think about, well, what if I made a broccoli casserole? Is that real food? It has parts of real foods in it. So that's where I think it gets really tricky. It's sometimes is easier to see specific foods, but when we talk about the way we eat, that we really eat, we don't always just eat meat, vegetable, you know, we don't always have to separate out. We have a taco. Well, now I have to get the taco. How many parts are in my taco?
Right. Yeah.
Is taco sauce real food? Right?
Or
Cheese,
the taco shell itself, yeah.
or the taco shell. How processed are we talking? So sometimes we have to even pull it back to how processed. You know, if I cut my spinach, that's processed.
Right.
To a degree, right? So that's where I think it starts to get tricky.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what you're getting at, Rachel, is I do the processing versus it was processed before I got the food. So I buy it real. I do a little bit of processing, whether it's cooking or chopping or mixing it with other foods.
Well, and
that's
so
going
it's
to be
the preparation of it too.
Yeah.
So I think speaking to your point, or kind of extending on that, how the food is cooked. I jokingly say that Southern food is Southern food because they cook the hell out of it. And there is, you know, I mean, when I was first introduced to Southern vegetables, I was like, what is this? There is no vegetable left. It's been cooked so long and overcooked that there is no, I'm like, and people love it. You know, Southern cooking is the thing. And I'm like, but there's no, I don't recognize this. I mean, it doesn't look like, because we grew up, Julie and I grew up in a farming community. We weren't on the farm, but we had our own garden for a while, and we certainly were on farms, and we knew what it was like to go out and pick apples from the trees and berries from the bushes and beans from the stalks and all that stuff. So we grew up around that, so we kind of knew that. And but yeah, we get to the preparation of it and how are you cooking it? You know, Julie has made a video about her favorite coffee and putting butter in it, real butter, which I don't like coffee. I like butter. So, you know, go that as may. But the fact is that it's real butter, grass fed and all that stuff. So a lot of it comes down to how things are prepared. You can buy all the best ingredients, but if you cook them to the point there's no nutrition left,
good point.
Or you put in added things, you put in the too much salt,
right,
or the wrong oils,
right.
What was the other one? SOS, salt, oil, sugar. Yeah. So, you know, a little bit of sugar makes the medicine go down, however that goes. But yeah.
Yeah. Good point.
So,
okay. Right. Okay. Eat food. All right. So, he closes by saying, today, much of the challenge of eating well comes down to choosing real food and avoiding those industrial novelties. That's right. Because 80% of what's in the grocery store is not real food.
Yeah.
80%. So
it may have started like that, like fruit roll-ups. Come on. They started as a banana, right?
Yeah.
Kidding. Just kidding.
Right. Yeah. And so, well, I was gonna ask us, each of us, or to our listeners, think about what was the last processed food that you had, and what's been the least processed food that you had in the last few days. So, what was the last processed food that you had? I mean, I'm talking about ultra processed. And what was the least processed food?
Greg's thinking.
I'm thinking probably yogurt. I changed yogurt brands yesterday because it was lower sugar, and I don't know what they did to them, but it's not good. So I don't know what they did. I need to look at the ingredients a little closer, but obviously I'm almost to the point, just throw those out and start over.
Yeah.
I'll have to double check the ingredients. I failed to check the ingredients. I just saw, you know, this is lower sugar and I like that. But so that's probably the most processed. And then the least processed would probably be just the bell pepper or the chicken. And I try to get, you know, quality chicken and, you know, make sure it's, you know, you read the labels, and I know kind of you take those labels with a grain of salt. But hopefully they are not. I mean, they claim not to have all the injections and the non-GMO and all that. But anyway, there's confusion. So that's probably those two things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Rachel?
We're always doing better than, right, Greg? I always try to encourage.
We're always doing better than. That's right. You don't have to be 100%, right?
Right. We're still learning. So I'm actually getting ready to break my fast as soon as we're done with our call with my power oatmeal. So the berries on my oatmeal are probably the least processed thing because they're just fresh berries. But I was kind of camping at a cabin at the lake this weekend, and I had chips. And Staying cool. Yes, playing in the river was so fun. But you know, I had some. I'm not a huge chip fan, but I had some Doritos because those were the things I loved when I was a kid. And I haven't had a Dorito in a while, and I mean, there's nothing real in a Dorito at all. Pretty sure. And you can taste it. Now, did it taste a little good? Did it excite my palate a little bit? Yeah. But real processed though, yeah. Right. I mean, that's an ultra processed.
Yeah.
Right. What about you, Dr. Gilbert?
Okay, let me think. Yesterday was pretty. I had I posted the beautiful dinner that my son made. The layers of zucchini and squash and tomato that came out of somebody's garden. So, and then we had the fresh cod that he made in the pan. So that was all whole and real. And the last thing that I ate processed was some ice cream, and that was on Saturday. So ice cream we bought from the store. You know, and this brings another really great point. It's not that you can't eat whatever, the ice cream or the yogurt or the Dorito, you may ask yourself, what would it look like if I made this myself? Because then you can start with those whole real ingredients, and it will be, yes, a little process, but less so. So,
well, absolutely. And if you make it a family project, it can be a fun thing to do.
Right.
And then if you use a mechanical ice cream maker, then it's an exercise.
Oh, then there's some exercise or this. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You get a workout in, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been a great discussion, and appreciate your time, Greg and Rachel. And we'll be here next week at 12:30 on Monday to talk about chapter 2. So until then, eat real.
I love the title of chapter 2, though. So that's a good one. Right?
Okay, that's right.
Don't eat anything your great grandparents wouldn't recognize as food. So
sneak peek. All right. Until next time. All right.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, everybody.